our final live session as part of our Team Flow and Human Leadership live series. We rescheduled this one from a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very pleased that we have Anna here joining us today. And we're going to be talking about a very important topic, which is about how we stay on track with both our performance and our well-being. So I'm looking forward to sharing this topic, exploring this topic a bit more with Anna today. And we are sharing on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube and on Facebook, as well as recording for our Spotify podcast. So firstly, Anna, welcome. It's lovely to see you today.
Hello.
Would you like
Nice to see you too.
Oh, great. Would you like to just do a brief introduction to who you are?
Yes, well, I'm Anna Nassif, and I'm a coach, researcher, practitioner, and I've been working with Wellbeing for nearly 15 years now in different settings, in organizations, in communities, and different sectors within the private sector as well.
Yeah. And you've been working with us for some time as well, which is really fantastic. We've loved having you on board with the team. And I'm really keen to talk to you today about this topic, because actually in organizations, lots of organizations are coming around, we're coming back into the next financial year, things are changing and opening up. People are talking about performance. How well are organizations doing right now? How well are people doing? How well are teams doing? And what I want to do today is elevate the well-being conversation to the same level as performance, so that when we're talking about performance, we're talking about well-being in conjunction, completely aligned, so that we know that when we're reviewing both, because they're so interconnected.
Absolutely.
So that's what I really wanted to really share with everyone today, is thinking about how people review performance, because it's been quite a structured process for many years. And how could that blend in well-being, and what could get in the way? How much do people even know about their own levels of performance and well-being to monitor it?
Yes, I think it's a tough question, because I don't think everybody is really aware of their levels of well-being, and especially the relationship between the well-being and performance. So we know that the research shows that our levels of well-being really have an impact on our performance. But how do we know? How are we really assessing ourselves? And I think that there is a pressure. I think I'm thinking about the current climate and pandemic, that for some of us, we're kind of working around the clock without really noticing what's happening to our well-being. And in terms of performance as well, I'm always curious about what is it that we are measuring in terms of performance when you go and have those reviews with our managers, for example, or when you have those team meetings on a regular basis. What is it that we're measuring? Are we measuring our output? Are we measuring how many hours we're working? And more and more, some people are really not having the right level of self-care and spending a lot of time working. And the question is that extra work increasing productivity, or actually having an impact on the well-being, and therefore negatively impacting the productivity? Whereas we might have an illusion that we're working more and we're producing more, is not always the case. And there is an impact on our day-to-day lives and our relationships at work as well. Because if you're not feeling well for whatever reason, and we have many different reasons, and that there are external factors, that has an impact on how we behave in the workplace, how we talk to each other, our levels of resilience, our emotional intelligence, our ability to self-regulate. All of that is impacted if we're not, we can't bring our best selves to work if our well-being is not quite there.
And sometimes we're not even very good at recognizing that ourselves, are we? So in terms of this question, how good are we at actually monitoring our own performance and well-being, particularly if you're one of those people that has, responsibilities for lots of other people, and it's things in your context that are being challenged rather than something you're personally challenged with. It can feel difficult to actually recognize that that's impacting how you are, whether it be your performance and or your well-being. And people aren't often very good at noticing that in time to do something about it. And yet what I do notice is that others are sometimes better at noticing how well we're doing in terms of our performance and well-being, aren't they?
Well, they are. And if you think about the workplace, let's think about a manager, a middle manager looking after a number of people. They want to be strong, they want to be resilient for their people, and they might be working really, really hard. And even if they're feeling the pressure, they just soldier on because they know they have responsibilities and so on. And other people may have noticed about perhaps they're a little bit more curt, perhaps they are less patient, or and sometimes we as individuals may not recognize that. And as you said, it's not just what's happening in the workplace. There might be you may have caring responsibilities, family, other issues in our lives, and of course they will impact us, and they do, and we take our whole selves to work, and then is quite nice, I think, that other people recognize, and to have that support and have that environment in the workplace where everyone is looking out for each other and looking after each other, because sometimes it's a lot easier to do something in relationship to our well-being as a collective, and also knowing that everyone is doing the same, so it becomes an accepted practice, than just one person being responsible for doing everything. And I've been really thinking about this, the movement towards enabling people and giving people tools for well-being in the workplace, and it can become too individualistic in the way that workplaces may provide a suite of offers and options and so on, but that can be like, you as an individual, you go and look after yourself, when you need to take that break, you go and sometimes it's not always the case. It's quite it's quite nice to have strong connections in the workplace, people saying, hey, let's go and do this together. How about as a team we take an hour's break, whatever is possible in that particular environment, but knowing that there is this almost like social and a sense of strong connections in the workplace, which is one of the key foundation stones for well-being, that it gives us that sense of belonging, and it gives that sense of someone is looking out for us, increases our resilience, and also is more helpful as we face the challenges that we do face on a day-to-day basis. So we can't, the challenges are always there, but it's how prepared we feel to deal with those challenges, and how we feel about ourselves and our team.
Yeah, and I love that focus that you mentioned there around things being quite individualistic. It does feel quite, I don't know if the balance is quite right in terms of accountability yet for well-being. And if I think about it, there was a similar kind of accountability balance probably about 7 or 8 years ago, when lots of people got rid of their very strict performance ratings and review cards and moved to having more regular conversations. And it was a bit more about, oh no, hang on, performance is your responsibility now. You go and sort yourself out. We'll have some regular coffee chats about how you're doing. And it's almost like sometimes, it may have tipped too far the other way, in the sense that people do need others to recognize and to give them feedback about how they're doing on both performance and on well-being too. And I worry, or I wonder about how many organizational kind of strategies to keep reviewing progress actually keep well-being at the same level of importance and attention as performance. And so we do, we have well-being surveys that are going on in organizations at the moment, and sometimes they've been blended into engagement surveys, sometimes they've taken over. But how much is that information looked at alongside performance information to be able to make a rounded decision about where's the organization at right now, what are we putting as a strategic priority for the business and for our people? And in humanizing work, how much is that needed on a team level? So that's the other piece that I think is really interesting with this question, is that, often team members are better at spotting when someone's struggling than the individual sometimes themselves. And yet the accountability often is lying with that individual, and spreading that out amongst the team, being aligned as a team in terms of how are we doing, making sure we're regularly monitoring our progress in terms of our performance as a team, but also just checking in, saying, do you know what? Actually, well-being, it changes every day for everybody. We all ebb and flow. We have days that are good, days that are not so good. But as a team, we can support and manage the flow of well-being, the flow of energy and flow of performance in the team, and allow for people to have that time to sort themselves out if they need to.
And they should be intrinsically linked. In organizations, when we support organizations in developing their wellbeing strategies, there are some key things which you can't really separate your wellbeing strategy from your engagement strategy, because how your employees are actually interested, engaged, and energetic about the work that they do, and aligned with the strategic objectives of the organizations, as you said, the performance. But I think in reality, that's done sometimes by different departments, different teams in the organization. So it doesn't really filter to that level where let's look at these things together, right? And then because the other thing about laying everything onto someone's individual door, as it were, is that some of the elements that might need to be revisited or changed can be part of the system. So they're not up to the individual. Whereas when you're looking at this from a collective perspective, from a team's perspective, some of the systemic pressures on individuals' well-being may be relieved, but you may be able to mitigate some of that. Whereas one individual alone might not have the influence or the leverage they would like to have to address some of those issues, which might not be just for that individual, might be quite a few individuals. And that collective approach is a lot more helpful as well. And I think it also helps in terms of defining how we're going to look at productivity, what is it measuring, what is it that we're evaluating for the team. And how wonderful it is if we can work as a team, and then if I'm not feeling my best, you can pick up something for me for about a week or whatever that might be. And if you're not feeling your best, in a couple of weeks' time, we pick it up, and then it feels like we're working as a collective, as opposed, I don't know, you've got your performance, make sure it's, and make sure you look after yourself, by the way. And it doesn't really give that sense of belonging and that kind of I really love positive leadership as a principle where everyone does a little bit more because we want to, because we bring that goodwill to the workplace, because we feel part of something and we find reasons to be our best. And I think the only way to do that is to combine both, as opposed to keep them completely separate, and not even knowing how we're measuring these things and how often and what for. Everything has to be linked. And I think, although I'm really grateful for the spotlight on wellbeing since the pandemic started, one of the worries is that kind of tokenistic approach, which is, perhaps they can have a yoga on a Friday, or we organize fruit, or whatever, some kind of, actions which in themselves are good, but they need to be part of a strategy. They need to be part of something bigger, and definitely they need to be tailored to individuals and teams. There is no one size fits all in that arena.
No, there isn't. But it's interesting, isn't there? Because there are some principles that are really important in terms of ways of working that support our well-being. And I'm in wholehearted agreement with you around the snacks and the yoga. It's all kind of cherry on top stuff. The actual day-to-day work that we're doing is what has the biggest impact on our well-being, and how we do that. Are we recognized for our contribution? Are we able to be ourselves and use our strengths on a daily basis? Do we feel part of a team that's aligned and that's working in the same direction? Do we feel that we're able to monitor and keep track of how we're doing together positively, and feel that we're able to motivate ourselves at different times in different ways, and know what motivates us and keeps us going, whether it be purpose or whether it be having a laugh in the office, being able to tap into what matters, and then having that cohesion, that really important connection where you have those meaningful connections with people. And I think being able to bring those elements into our work is sometimes not that easy. So what I noticed is that in the last year, particularly with people working more in hybrid teams or more dispersed, people have become almost more responsible for their individual performance, because they've been on their own, they've been isolated, they've been able to reach out and connect with team members, but more has been done in that insular way. And so we're going to have to make even more effort to bring in that cohesion, that opportunity to help make people feel connected. Certainly in hybrid teams now, we've got more people returning to workplaces than before. And and then we've still got some people who aren't. But how included do they feel when they're on a screen in a room full of people who are all chatting and able to, be able to engage with each other in a physical way? And
it can be quite isolating, can't it?
Really isolating, yeah. So how do we proactively in teams make sure that we don't let that happen? For me, it's about this proactivity is so critical, because there's lots in place for people who are falling over. We've got mental health first aiders, we've got all these self-help options, we've got an EAP system with counsellors and therapists to talk to when things are going wrong. Fantastic, that's great. But what about not letting us get to that point? And this is where I think the crux of this is so important, because as you and I will know, when someone burns out, when they have a traumatic event, whether it be just continuous pressure or something specific that creates that burnout, even after they recover, any small trigger can take them to the same place physically and mentally that they were in a traumatic event that might not be as relevant. And it might seem over dramatic and over the top to the rest of the team who maybe don't know that person. But we need to prevent those things from happening so that people are well in advance. People are able to feel strong, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. And how lovely it is to be able to talk about those things in the workplace, talk about our well-being, talking about our sense of connection, talk about whether we feel valued or whether there's something else that we could be doing as a team. So we know the value of our work, regardless of the environment that we work, regardless of the work that we do, but knowing that there is value to someone and recognizing that as a team, appreciating each other's strengths, appreciating what we do together. And just having that conversation is really valuable for people, and being able to bring my whole self to work and be myself, regardless of what's going on in my life, to be able to tell people and share with people if I feel comfortable. But creating that trusting environment is really important, and that's really important for positive well-being, as you're saying, because that's what gives us energy and commitment in the workplace. And that's what helps us develop resilience when things don't go well. And things will go wrong. They go wrong every day. We just need them. And some of us are more robust in the resilience aspect than others, but also we can learn that. That's a skill we can develop together. We can become resilient as a team. Again, it's the collective resilience more than you, Anna, you, Alex, you, John, whoever it is, have, let's get you more resilient. Actually, as a team, we can do that together. And that's the only way you can bring our best selves to work. The mental health support is really important and absolutely essential. But that support has a different role, which is a kind of a reparative role, whereas the positive well-being is supportive and preventative. So you're helping people. Hopefully, for some of us, just having that will help us not to get to a point that it might be too difficult, challenging, or if we're seeing that we're getting it that way, we know where to get help, further help, so we don't kind of go, beyond the cliff, as it were. And I think that is really important. We think about our physical health and our well-being. It should all be in the same package, because we are kind of physical and mental and emotional. Our emotional health, our physical health, and our mental health are equally important. And having a workplace that acknowledges that is equally important, and a place where we can all talk about these things together and decide between us what might be a good way forward. What kind of practices do we need to put in place collectively to support that? And having support and buy-in across organizations and across different teams also important as well. That we walk the talk as managers and leaders, not just expect other people to do. And I think it's interesting, because when I think about collective and then team, is that sometimes when we go into organizations and you're trying to do this well-being work, developing strategies and training people and coaching people, sometimes a leader say, oh, this work is great that you're doing. I can't do it myself, but I haven't got time for that. And immediately have to just think, well, is everyone together? We all need to be in this together. It can't be something that you give it again, give it to someone, is something we live together, and it becomes our culture. It's a cultural change that's needed. So there is that respect and recognition of what we're trying to achieve, and then it can bring the performance and the well-being, and then it becomes something that's intrinsically linked for a good reason and in a very good way and productive way, I think.
Yeah, and it's, if we think about, what are we talking about? Like literally practicality, simple steps. What can we actually do that will make a difference? It really reminds me of the activity that we've been doing in Bailey and French for all our meetings, but that we started out doing in our very first workshops kind of 7 years ago, which was just asking people to share 3 things they were grateful for before we get started with anything. People in workshops are used to doing an icebreaker or some kind of informal kind of conversation to kind of get warmed up and talking. And over the years, we've tailored that more around aspects of PERMA, which is the Seligman model of flourishing and thriving. And so we've started asking people, what do you feel proud of today, or what do you feel you've accomplished this week, or what has been meaningful to you, and just simply adding a question at the beginning of a meeting. A one-to-one, a team meeting, or a larger group meeting, even if you don't have time for everyone to go around and give their answers, even if everyone just answers in the chat, or if everyone just thinks about it for themselves or takes it away with them to ask someone else in the day. That is powerful. And it's one of the most sticky activities we've ever done. We've done some really extensive programs, but that one always comes back to, do you know what, that really changed my life. I did that. I've done it every day with my kids coming back from school in the car. It actually helps to retrain your brain to focus on the things that are good, the things that are helping us through challenges in life. And when they're part of the conversation about work, it naturally becomes a hand-in-hand conversation, doesn't it?
It does, and it's a time to appreciate. One of the things I kind of like about asking people, what have you accomplished this week, and the recognition is that we're not immediately thinking about the next thing that we haven't accomplished yet. We're actually saying, what have you done this week that you're really proud of? And it's like, I've done stuff. I've accomplished something. I'm grateful for things. And when we think about that, it invariably makes us feel good. You have those positive emotions, and you're building relationships and so on. It doesn't need to be something that, kind of groundbreaking or anything like that. It's the daily practice. The daily practices are really, really important. It's how we talk to people, how we choose to communicate with each other, what kind of lens, as PERMA is a fantastic lens through which looking in the workplace. And so we're creating those positive relationships. It's an environment that becomes positive because we're actually appreciating each other. We're recognizing the things we've accomplished. You were asking people about what's been meaningful to you today and so on. And you can have those conversations not only with your staff, you can have those conversations with your clients, in your meetings with clients, in your meetings with suppliers, and giving people space. We're talking about the pandemic and how transactional sometimes the online world can be, that you get on a call, that's the agenda, let's get on with it, bang, 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 bye. And then it's just like, wow, what's just happened here? Whereas having that initial time to talk to each other and recognize people and ask them how they are and really mean it and really listen to them and ask them, what have you done this week that you're proud of or you're grateful for? It just puts people in a much different space to then get on with the work. It's not getting on with the work, but it puts you in a better space.
And it spreads, doesn't it? It's infectious. Yes. Like you can't help but have the conversation that puts the positive light on the situation, and that does help us. I think for a time, I think we certainly went the wrong way, and we were doing so much of those conversations. It was a bit like, oh my goodness, again, it felt a little bit draining. I was like, do I have to think of another thing that I'm really happy about? So it's kind of like you've got to get, again, it's all about balance, isn't it? It's got to be like, actually, are we really getting somewhere here, and are we in this together? How do we feel about how we are together as a team? And certainly in terms of feeling aligned, the emphasis here is on being aligned in terms of where we are on track with our performance, but also bringing that well-being into the light, being able to say, actually, as a team, how are we doing on our well-being right now? Could we do anything to make it better? Would we be okay in a scenario where a huge challenge came up next week? How would we face that? Who would feel strong going into that challenge? Who would need more support going into that challenge? And, testing future scenarios, exploring and being curious about where we are right now helps people think then about, actually, life is challenging at the moment. Things are coming up every single day, and thinking ahead about it and going, do you know what? Actually, my next week, I've got no room for anything to go wrong. Perhaps I should take a couple of those bits out and be quite strategic and say, actually, that's too much for that day. Because if anything, the risk of what things could go wrong on that day means that I'll be stressed or I'll be, worried about something. And it takes a lot to do that self-management, doesn't it? But you can do it for other people. And I find sometimes it's about, okay, in a pair, we could talk this out and actually nail it in seconds.
Yes, absolutely. Is the part of sharing, isn't it? And just having being able to talk to people and actually being listened to, which is a key thing, and having other people notice things about you in the workplace that are helpful, and making that comment and offering that help and support, and of course we know, the research shows that if we've got better levels of well-being, then we do more and we do better, and so if there is a really good reason for that, and there is the human reason, right? Because well-being is important for everybody, and well-being is an important thing in itself, and for organizations is really nurturing their staff, so they go the extra mile. They do, and they go the extra mile as a collective. So it's not just about being productive and doing more, but it's being productive, doing more together, and knowing the value of that work and feeling valued. So it's not just about numbers and targets and so on.
And about leaders being able to give platforms for people to make that happen and make that possible. Exactly that. Because, I hear a lot of people at the moment saying, oh, well-being is top of our agenda. It's top priority. And I always want to say, okay, so tell me a bit more about that. In what way are you responding to the fact that it's a top priority for your people right now? Is it just making sure that things are available for people who are struggling? Or actually, are you creating platforms as a senior leader or as a manager on a daily basis for people to talk about the things that are important to them if they need to, or not if they don't want to, but making sure that it's okay, that the team performance is what matters most, the outcome that we're focusing on, as you said before, not the productivity, not the hours. It's about how do we actually work together as a system, as a combination of humans, all being brilliantly human.
It makes so much sense, Alex. It really does. And when you look at the research again, we know that when leaders support well-being initiatives in the workplace, that tends to be the outcomes tend to be much better than when there isn't any kind of leadership support. And the leadership support is about walking the talk, and as you said, making that happen, not just as a tokenistic way, but actually really embedding those practices in the organization. And of course, we're here because we do what we do and we love what we do and bias, but it's not that difficult. It takes like goodwill and really wanting to pause and look at how things are done. But we're not talking about really difficult practices or anything like that. It's just about really nurturing that way of being in the organization slowly, and then talking to people, engaging people, and doing day-to-day things, as well as the systemic changes that might be needed. But it's embracing that way of being and realizing that that way of being is a lot better for everyone involved, and everyone wins in the end, and not just the organization, customers.
It's that sustainable long-term focus, isn't it? Which is so important, particularly with more purpose-led organizations now saying, actually, we're focused on something bigger than just the profit. So I loved our conversation. Anna, we've come to the time's up already. We've come to the end of our session, and I've got so many more things I want to talk to you about. It's been buzzing with ideas.
Thank you. Absolutely.
really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've had a great conversation about how to keep on track with our performance and our well-being, staying aligned as a team, not just as individuals, and really thinking about what are the practical ways that we can every single day bring those types of conversations to make it reality that we can focus on our well-being into everyday ways of working. So thank you so much. Thank you to all our viewers today. I hope you've enjoyed listening with us, and there's plenty more videos available on all our platforms talking about different aspects of humanizing work. But thank you, Anna. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I do. You take care. Thank you, everyone.